Hello everyone, thanks for joining me on today's 172nd Air Wing video review. Some of you who have subscribed to the channel or have looked at my earlier content may notice that this is a familiar model to look at. I'm doing a Redux review of my Calibre Wings F-14A in the Ghostrider Modex 114 Top Gun colors. This is probably the most famous F-14 bureau number of all time, so I'm not going to get into the historical aspects of it like I normally would, just because odds are if you are watching this video and you are subscribed to my channel, you probably know all about the history of this F-14 and its association with the relatively famous Hollywood film Top Gun from 1986. So, since most of us here are probably already very familiar with the history of this airplane, we're not going to go into the in-depth nature of that. If you do want to learn a little bit more about this aircraft, do check out my other video reviews that I've done on it throughout the 2 years that I've had this channel operating. So with that, we're going to focus on the model aspects because it's come to my attention that Calibre Wings is doing a reissue of this F-14. Basically, it looks like they are repackaging it. This particular release came out in 2019, about a couple of years before the Top Gun Maverick movie came out. Based on the timing of it, this release was originally supposed to coincide with the original drop date of Top Gun Maverick, but of course, due to the pandemic, the movie studio delayed the release of Top Gun Maverick for 2 years, which kind of left this particular model release in a bit of a limbo status until the second sequel came out. And when Top Gun Maverick did hit the theaters, oh boy, this release got popular and expensive fast. I do remember when I was shooting a video sometime last year with the F-4J and the FA-18 F Super Hornet. When I did that video a year or so, I remember looking at the prices of this, and there were some pushing $1,000 on eBay. I'm glad to say that the market's cooled down quite a bit since then, but you still are coughing up almost $200-something to get one of these. I looked at prices this morning, and on secondary market, they're selling for about $250 US out the door. So yeah, not cheap to get a hold of whatsoever, and there's only 2 selling them right now. So yeah, I would not recommend buying this at that price. When I picked this up, I ordered it directly from Calibre for about $150 shipped, and it took about I want to say 2 months to get to me. But I did order this during the pandemic, so the mail time probably was a little bit longer than normal for that reason. So I am glad to see that Calibre is revisiting this. I know some modelers aren't necessarily fans of reissues, whether that is because of perceived value or exclusivity or what have you. But personally, I think manufacturers should do that often because not everybody happens to have the awareness to know when a model they're interested in comes out, unless they stumble across a forum post or social media or a video like this one. It's not a good situation for someone to look at a model, get excited about it, hop on eBay or their favorite retailer to buy it, and the price is just it's insanely high or far out of their budget, and it's just kind of a buzzkill, right? It's not a good experience. So I'm glad to see that Calibre Wings is revisiting this, and I hope they do that more often with their more popular F-14s. So since it looks like Calibre is going to reissue this with a timeline of end of Q1 2023 at the time of this video, I would say those of you that are interested in an F-14 in these colors should probably consider pre-ordering it, and hopefully you'll find this video informative on your purchase decision, because if you haven't seen the original release, it's kind of hard to make a choice, and photos online don't really get the point across. So especially when it comes to something that you're going to lay between $150 and $200. And I know some of you European collectors now have to deal with importation tax, and some of you that are located in the UK, you have to worry about Brexit and the import complications of that. So ordering a model now is much more expensive than it was when I first reviewed this way back in the beginning of 2020 during the pandemic. So to kind of guide some folks' purchase decisions, I felt it wise to do a Redux video of this model and talk to some of the things that I have spoken about in some of my other videos about Calibre F-14s, but it's worth revisiting to once again help guide that purchase decision for picking up the reissue of this at some point this year when Calibre does release them. So we'll talk about the pros here. The first is the weathering is done really well on this. Normally, I am not a fan of when manufacturers put weathering on a factory model. I think that's something mostly that should be done by the modeler, and that manufacturers should stick to issuing clean, factory fresh finishes. That way, if we as the modeling customer buy it and do feel that it should be dirtied up or weathered, we have complete latitude to do that ourselves. Manufacturers really should not get into that line of work, because inevitably it's either going to be too much for some people and not enough for others. And that's something I feel should be left to the collector. Now, that said, with this release, I am supportive of how Calibre did it, because they are modeling a specific F-14 at a specific time in a specific media, which is of course the original Top Gun movie, and that airplane's weathered. So modeling that on this airplane makes complete sense, and I'm glad to say that they captured it fairly well. They've got the landing gear weathering done really well. I also liked how they weathered the inside of the wings. So when these are fully swept out, the inside has some weathering, because generally speaking, that's where the interior of the wing will just wear over time from contact with the wing glove. So on the top and on the bottom, you will see that, and I'm glad to see that Calibre has modeled that well. There is also some weathering details on the external fuel tanks mounted underneath here. Once again, also some weathering details on the landing gear, as well as certain elements on the top and on the bottom of the fuselage. So A+ to Calibre for that. One of the other positives that Calibre has done are the compressor faces. I couldn't really capture it with the video, but if you look down the intakes here, you will see that the TF30 compressor faces are completely modeled, and they are accurately positioned round about this part of the fuselage. So they're not directly in front of the intakes as you would see on a Hobbymaster or Calibre or Sentry wings. And they are not just some weird, just cheap face that they put in the side like you see on a JC wings. Calibre is modeled it accurately, and I'm glad to say that it looks really good. So unfortunately, I couldn't really capture it in the footage, because I'd have to basically shine a light directly down the intake, and if I'm shining a light down the intake, I have no place to put the camera, and if I put the camera in front of the light, no more light. So unfortunately, that's something I couldn't capture, but it is a great detail, and I'm really glad to see that Calibre included it. Hopefully the other manufacturers take note and improve their toolings accordingly. So the other benefit that I like to point out is the labels. So if you see here, some of the stenciling for the nose step and access doors, as well as the boxes that you need to open to service the F-14, all of those areas are labeled nicely. The detail on the bureau number, service insignia is also well done. There's no washed out colors or misshapen labels or weird stenciling. So once again, that's a point in Calibre's favor in terms of paint quality. And I would say it's very much comparable to the best of Sentry wings in that regard. The other good thing that I like to point out about Calibre is they do feature the glove vanes. So on the F-14A, earlier versions had a glove vane where this part comes out, and it improves the F-14's supersonic maneuverability, enabling a 7G pull above the speed of sound. These parts were actually disabled by the US Navy because they turned out to be corrosion traps when the aircraft were embarked on carriers. So over time, they became pretty much superfluous. There wasn't really a point in being able to pull 7Gs at Mach 1. That just we never had a situation where that was relevant to the mission of the F-14 or its later function in the air-to-ground role in the F-14D and the updated F-14As. So this feature was deactivated on the U.S. Navy F-14s, so you won't see the glove vanes too much on later models. Incidentally, the IRIAF, the Islamic Republic of Iran, has not disabled their glove vanes because they fly their airplanes out of deserts. And in the desert, corrosion from moisture is not an operational concern for various understandable reasons. So their glove vanes still work on their F-14s, and you can still see that on some of their air show footage and whatnot that comes out on social media from time to time. Back to the F-14, Calibre has modeled that well. What you would do is you would take the landing gear insert out, take a set of needle nose pliers or tweezers or a small little key that you get from a Hobbymaster model, put it up inside the wing glove, and you would just push this out, and you would be able to display your Calibre Wings F-14 with the glove vanes deployed, if you so choose. And I'm glad to see that they did model that. The shape of the canopy is also well done. Instead of having the windshield be a part that's glued on top of the F-14, like you see on the Century Wings and the Hobbymaster offerings, the Calibre version is blended into the body of the nose, just like you would see on the real thing. So once again, I am happy to see that they've done that. We'll get to the shape of it. Well, I should say the height. The shape's accurate, but I think the height is a bit too tall for, especially when you look at it from head on, which I will get to in the cons section, which we'll just shift into here. So cons of the model. We'll start off with, I guess, the canopy, since I did just leave that subject in the pros. While the windshield is modeled very well, it is relatively tall. I would say almost too tall. Once you get to about here and into about here, the extra height of the canopy really is obvious, especially when you compare it to something like the Hobbymaster or the Century Wings versions, where you don't get quite as pronounced of a canopy hump between the first canopy frame and the second canopy frame there. So this part probably could use a height reduction right about there, just to bring the canopy a little bit more in line with what you would see on the actual aircraft. This is a good opportunity to point out something else too. You may have noticed that there's a pretty wide gap here in the pylons there. You can see I can almost pull it out with just the tip of my pen right here. And this is emblematic of one of the drawbacks of the F-14 from Calibre, and it is the small parts fit. I've got blue tack holding up half of the accessories on this airplane right now, especially this pylon right here. If I gave it a healthy enough tap with this pen, it's just going to fall right off the model. And this is something that has been an issue with many of the earlier F-14 releases from Calibre. What was the squadron name? I'm trying to think of it here. The VF-84. I didn't want to say VF-103 by mistake, so I had to think on that. The VF-84 1977 Nimitz Tomcat that I showcased earlier, they seem to have improved that well. That Nimitz Tomcat came out after this release, so hopefully Calibre Wings can maintain that higher standard of parts fit and tolerance with their reissue of this in Q2 2023. With this one, I've got blue tack holding up half of the accessories on this model. So just bear in mind, if you do pick this up, you probably want to get a set of files and some blue tack or white glue, because you're probably going to need to use that to attach it if this release is any indication. So on that note, we'll shift to the afterburners. So when you look back here, these are actually the afterburners in the full open position, which kind of surprised me, because when you look at the Century Wings F-14, you'll notice that the afterburner pedals are much closer to the fuselage than what you see here on the Calibre. These almost look like the afterburner in military power, because they're still relatively closed. In afterburner, the nozzle goes almost completely into the housing of the engine, because you want all that afterburned, reef-burned fuel and thrust to come out without any constriction. So this is a bit of a strange configuration to have it be in quote-unquote full afterburner. I would have liked to see this with something more resembling what you would see on a Century Wings F-14 in full afterburner, where there's just not much of a nozzle here, which is of course also reflective of the real-life aircraft. The other con I'd like to point out, and this is more of a related issue, because when you look at the wing dihedral, or the angle of the wings when you're looking at the model from the front, the wing dihedral is incorrect on the Calibre wings F-14. They should be more even, and there is a more pronounced angle on this model than what you would see on the competitors, which are from JC Wings, Century Wings, and Hobbymaster. The other drawback is the intakes are they're too tall. There's too much of they're too tall from the bottom to the top here. So because they're too tall from the bottom to the top, relative to the fuselage, what you will see is the Phoenix pylons are really shallow to make up for that, because otherwise, if the Phoenix pylons were accurately sized relative to the intakes, they would be comically huge. Basically, I'm not sure what the core problem is. Maybe the fuselage is too narrow, or the intakes are too steeply cut and they need to relax the angle. So instead of it being this angle, maybe it needs to be a little more shallow. I'm not entirely sure what the root cause of it is, but the wing angle is too high and the intakes are too deeply cut, which means your Phoenix rails, to compensate, are much shallower to maintain the proportions than they are in the actual airplane. So I know in previous live streams, Noel Lee of Calibre Wings has pointed out that these are things that he's looking at fixing. So I'm not sure he'll be able to do that with this tooling, but maybe we'll see some changes in the next tooling. So those of you that are interested in getting this should be aware that if you park this next to a Hobbymaster or a Century Wings model, you're going to see some differences between that, and just understand where that's coming from. So on balance, I think none of those individual flaws are deal breakers for purchasing this. If you are fans of the Top Gun F-14, I would certainly not wait, because if you do wait, you probably won't be able to get one. Heck, I wouldn't be surprised if people who didn't pre-order it are just completely out of luck if they can get one, because this strikes me as one of those releases that Calibre will do this year, which will be popular enough to sell out from day one. So again, if you do like this model and you do like what it represents and the color scheme and Goose and Maverick and all that, get it right away. Do the pre-order and just bite the bullet and get in line, because otherwise you're probably going to miss out and you're going to be coughing up $250, $300 to get one of these. So to avoid that fate, that's why I'm sharing this video, again, to help guide discussion. Hopefully people that might be considering ordering one of these will have the information they need to make a decision, good, bad, or otherwise. So personally, I like this release, flaws understood, and I'm glad to have it in my collection. So make of that what you will. And with that, thank you for watching the video to this point. If you are a current subscriber, I'd like to extend my thanks. So those of you who are not subscribers, I would humbly ask that you consider being a subscriber. That way, when I do upload a new video each week, you will be notified when it is ready for viewing. So thank you again for tuning in and watching today's video. Feel free to check out the other model reviews and historical context discussions that I've done on the other features on my channel. And thank you again for watching.